Hi, my name is Peter KOFI, and I participated in S-Culture in 2017 first round as an undergraduate student at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. And I'm currently on course for S-Culture coaching program, which is near completion. In this meeting, I'm going to talk about an important topic that is absolutely necessary for students working in global virtual teams. And it will be helpful if students have an insight into what to expect in a given situation when working in global virtual teams. What am I going to talk about? You would ask. I'm going to talk about the known problems in global virtual teams and the best ways to address them. S-Culture is a program designed to offer students an opportunity to complete a project in a global virtual team and, in the process, experience the challenges and learn the best practices of global virtual team collaboration. Just like a rare job on a project involving people from different countries, participating in S-Culture is very demanding. Students will experience problems and conflicts in the process. There will be time when every student will be frustrated and upset. Some team members will show disappointing performances. However, students will also learn a lot in the process, and when they must work in global virtual teams again as part of their job, they would be much better prepared, knowing what to expect and how to resolve problems when they arise. The challenges students will experience in S-Culture are exactly the challenges students will experience when they work in a team as part of their future job. S-Culture is just a time machine that shows you what will happen to you when you are to work with people from around the world on a project that will be part of their job. It will not be any different from the real world, and the better you learn now how to deal with those challenges that comes as a result of working in global virtual teams, the more effective you will be on a similar project in the future. So in today's discussion, we're going to talk about the known and inevitable problems in global virtual teams and the best ways to address them. Now, this is going to be my outline. We will look at time zone differences and the best ways to tackle them. Then we will also look at scheduling and coordination problems and the best practices on them. We will also go ahead to talk about the problems of calendar differences of team members and what teams need to do. Then we will talk about language proficiency differences in teams and best practice. We will talk about converting copies of documents in email attachments and what teams can do about it. Then we are going to talk about cultural differences, which is one of the most important problems and challenges students face when working in global virtual teams, and the best way out. We'll talk about lack of commitment from some team members in global virtual teams and the S-Culture project as a whole, which is technically known as free riding and the best way to offset free riding. We talk about lack of leadership difficulties with workload distribution and team coordination and what can be done to solve them. And then finally, I'm going to discuss about poor quality of work from some team members and plagiarism and what best can be done about this. Then we conclude and bring the meeting to a close. First of all, time zone differences is a major problem or challenge that students face in global virtual teams. Global virtual teams by definition are global, and team members are around the planet in different places and in different time zones. Time zone differences in global virtual teams like the Esquire project cannot be avoided because the project is designed to take into account some cross-cultural differences, and students would not always have all their team members at the same time zone. This is not a punishment, as many who may be unsatisfied with putting teams in different time zones will think. That is not a punishment at all. Time zone differences make it very difficult to schedule a live conversation among team members that may go a long way to enhance team participation and collaboration for success. The underlying fact is that sometimes hosting live meetings in Skype or Google Hangouts is extremely important, especially in the first stage of the Esquire project, and even a single Skype can significantly improve team dynamics and performance. Based on previous studies in Esquire, time zone differences have a 76% occurrence rate, and it is an inevitable part of the Esquire project and affects global virtual teams collaboration and coordination. The biggest challenge GTV members have is the lack of interpersonal contact. In fact, it is the biggest challenge. Without live meetings, team members are just letters on the computer screen. Sometimes team members do not even know if their team members in other countries are male or females. As a result, the team members never develop the rapport and social ties that hold the team together, which communicates a sense of belonging and a sense of social obligation to one another. And no amount of email or instant messaging can replace a few minutes of actual live conversation. Time zone differences has a lot of consequences on teams working in global virtual teams. First, time zone dispersion makes it hard to find a time for the teleconference that works for all team members, which leads to a sense of dissatisfaction with the team members who cannot join the conversation or with the team as a whole. And second, global dispersion of time team members makes communication in global virtual team very slow. And third, it makes it difficult for teams to schedule meetings. For instance, you could have a team member in Ghana, as I am now, and you send an email to your team member in Canada. The person is likely sleeping and will not see your message until tomorrow. When the reply is sent, you will likely be sleeping as well, so you will not see the reply until 2 days later or maybe a day later. As a result, team members are rarely able to exchange more than 2 or 3 messages per week, and that could affect team participation and collaboration. In and of itself, it is not a big challenge. However, combined with self-serving biases and difficulties of observing performances in global virtual teams, time zone differences becomes one of the leading problems that teams face in global virtual team projects. People are sensitive to injustice. We get upset if we do more work compared to others on the team, and this may be due to time zone differences. Time zone differences is one of the biggest challenges in GTVs, and Esquire is not an exception. But the question is, what is the best way to address them? And this takes us to some of the best practices that students can put in place to ensure that uh, they work as much as possible to reduce the impact of time zone differences on their work in their culture. The most important thing to note is that there is no easy way to solve the root cause of inability to communicate live, which would require moving all team members to the same time zone, and S culture does not allow this to happen. However, teams that try harder and still have at least occasional real-time conversations via Facebook, Skype, or Google Hangouts tend to greatly improve their team's climate and performances. Even if only a few team members can join the teleconference, such an approach speeds up things for the team. If not all team members can join at once, it is a good idea to have several teleconferences with 2 or 3 team members each time so that all have participated uh, in the live conference at least for some times. Sometimes recording the live meetings and sharing them with team members who could not attend the meeting live aids them as well to have a better understanding of what transpired in the teleconference. So it is important for the teams to put this in place to make sure that it works best for the team, and it will greatly help the teams to offset the influence of time zone differences on their Escorter project. Now, Doodle is an excellent free tool that makes coordination and scheduling easy. It automatically adjusts the schedule for time zones, and several other useful functions are available with this tool, and it can help students working in global virtual teams to schedule the best time that works for each of them. So when it comes to the issue of time zone differences, it's important to use Doodle to schedule meetings among team members. The second problem, and in fact very known problem in global virtual team that I'm going to talk about, is scheduling and coordination problems. Now, related to challenges in time zone differences is the challenge of scheduling. Often team members are having difficulty scheduling meetings even if all the team members are in neighboring time zones, and it even happens in class. Whilst we are in class together, it's become very difficult to schedule meetings among ourselves on an assignment that we are supposed to complete. And the biggest challenge comes when you are working in global virtual teams. Often team members are having difficulty scheduling meetings even if all team members are close together. Sometimes team members may want to co-edit documents in global virtual teams at the same time, or have a meeting among 2 or 3 team members, or decide on an important deadline. It may be a rare hassle for global virtual teams to find a time that works for all team members for a teleconference or to have a vote on an issue. Sometimes sending emails back and forth takes time, and often leads to much confusion. Sometimes you may think the problem is the inability of team members to put up much effort in the team's project, or the situation is due to lack of time management on the part of the team members, but you could be wrong. The real challenge is to find an appropriate platform that every team member could indicate when they would come on board to work on the project, and that's the time that works for everyone. Now, in what best way can scheduling be done? And in what best way can coordination in global virtual team be done? It works best for teams working in global virtual teams to complete a project like Escorter To use Doodle to find a time that works for everybody, or to get anyone votes on an issue. Once again, Doodle provides the necessary tools team members can use to help find the best time that works for everyone. And Doodle can be used to schedule meetings, and it can also be used to have a vote on an issue. In fact, it is a very unique and very important tool when it comes to scheduling and coordination in global virtual teams. So students should patronize the use of Doodle to help offset the problem of scheduling and coordination. The next problem I'm going to talk about is the calendar differences and what global virtual teams can do. Members of global virtual teams come from countries that are very different and have different holidays and academic calendars as well. Someone's business day may be another team member's holiday. This often disrupts teamwork flow and leads to unexpected delays, and sometimes it can even bring about conflict within the team. The issue is especially salient when the holidays coincide with the deadlines. For example, the US Thanksgiving is often very close to the final deadline for the S-Quarter project and in the October to December rounds. So if you happen to have about 2 to 3 US-based team members in the team, it may often create a major problem for the team. The challenge is that if the team is sufficiently diverse, it is impossible to fully account for these calendar differences. No matter how much the deadlines are moved, there will be always someone on the team whose days whose days off or holidays will conflict with the deadlines, and so it is a very big challenge when it comes to working in global virtual teams. The only way to deal with the challenges that members in global virtual teams, and in fact each member happens to have in their own countries, is for the team to plan ahead. This is the most important thing, to plan ahead. It is a very good practice to ask all team members to share when they will be on holiday or unable to participate for other reasons. If the team is informed ahead of time, then it is usually easy to rearrange the workload so that the team members' absence may not affect the workflow of the project. It is also a good idea to assume that your team member are not familiar with the holidays in your country. Even huge international holidays like Christmas or New Year may not be celebrated in some countries, and your team members may not realize you will be off on those days. The same applies to holidays like Ramadan that are very big in some parts of the world but completely unknown to others. So the very important thing for team members to do to offset the calendar differences that may be faced or may have an impact on their project in the S-Quarter is to plan ahead, to know what to expect from each team members, their days off, and what the team can do about it. The next problem is the language proficiency differences in global virtual teams. In truly global teams, most team members will have different native languages. For instance, I am in Ghana and my languages will be different from those in US, those in Canada, Pakistan, and those in other parts of the country. No matter what working language the team chooses, for most team members, it will affect the flow of work in the team. This may lead to communication difficulties as well, and furthermore, it is likely that writing it is likely that the writing by the team members who are working in global virtual teams may be poor because they may not be fluent in the working language. The problem of working language proficiencies is sometimes also overestimated in global virtual teams, and the real reason is not because most people are not fluent in English or are not particularly fluent in the working language that the team may choose to use. Once S-Culture have chosen official working language as English, it will be nice for everybody, and as a matter of fact, I know every team member working in a global virtual team has an idea about how to coordinate with each other and at least can express themselves more in English, and that could help them. But in it all, language proficiency differences affect global virtual team coordination. Now the question is, what is the best thing to do in language proficiency differences in global virtual teams? Sometimes it is unwise not to rush to blame performance deficiencies on the working language skills. It is also not important to blame each other for not having not being fluent in the working language. Poor English skills are a convenient excuse for students in global virtual teams. So, but the true cause may be lie in lack of effort. This applies to both the team members who justify the lack of their participation in discussion and the poor quality of writing they produce on their English. The truth is that even if some team members are not perfectly fluent in English, but work hard, language is not such an obstacle to the problem. So the only thing about S-Culture that makes it interesting is that it's full of research, and if you're not fluent in English, you could be working as a researcher for the team. And it's works best if the team members who are not fluent in English are assigned tasks that do not require them to produce finished written pieces. For example, they can be assigned to search for information and literature, perform coordination tasks, submit a report, and possibly write initial drafts of some report sections. Then team members who are more fluent in English, in turn, should be assigned to do more writing and possibly final copy editing of the work. And that will go a long way to help the teams to offset the problem of language proficiency in global virtual teams. The next problem I'm going to address is conflicting copies of the documents in email attachments. When teams rely on email attachment to co-develop the team report, it may be hard to track which attachment is the latest version of the file, and somebody always make edits in an older version of the file, and the team ends up with conflicting copies of the documents. Merging those files may be a rare challenge at times, and this leads to lost time, frustration, and usually undermines motivation to continue the S-Culture project. Also, it is very common occurrence that a wrong file is attached, or the sender realizes the file needs a little update after the file had been sent. Unfortunately, once the emails have been sent, it is impossible to access the attached file and replace or correct it. So the sender has no choice but to make the necessary minor corrections and then send a new email with a new attachment. And this is to say that multiple sending of emails among and between team members can bring a lot of problems in global virtual teams. And what is the best way to address this challenge? It is never a good idea to share files via email attachment, as most people are not often reading their emails, or they normally don't rely on emails for communication. It is just a bad outdated practice to be sending files through email attachments. Dropbox is by far the best and most convenient tool for sharing and co-editing developing files. So students can make use of Dropbox in this situation. Now the only shortcoming of Dropbox is that it does not allow for simultaneous co-editing of the file by 2 or more people. If multiple people open and edit the same file at the same time, Dropbox creates 2 copies of the file. It does not inform both users that someone else is using the file or not. So it is very easy to spot the problem before multiple copies are created. So this sometimes leads to confusion and the need to merge the files, the file copies later. And so to solve this problem, Google Docs help teams or those working in global virtual teams by allowing multiple users to co-edit the file at the same time. The users literally see how someone else is typing and then the new information being added to the document. There are also another tools like OneDrive or iCloud that perform similar functions. So the best way that the problem of multiple copies of document can be addressed is the use of Dropbox and Google Docs, or some people can be too advanced to use OneDrive or iCloud in the process. Now the next challenge in global virtual team is cultural differences, and this is in fact the most important differences. Cultural differences is a problem that most students in global virtual teams report, and according to S-Culture studies, the problem is reported by 78% of the teams, but objectively, it's a problem in only 12% of the teams. And there could be lots of reasons to this, because from the beginning, students may try to find the cultures of others unfamiliar, but as time goes on, when they start to communicate with each other, they try to develop the culture, the social ties that help them to work best in the team. Now, members of global virtual teams also differ in many ways. They are coming from different cultural backgrounds, and their values, attitude, traditions, working and communication styles are different. They are taught and evaluated by different instructors as well, so they are likely to have different levels of skills and different understanding of the task. All these differences are often referred to as the cultural differences, and it have a lot of influence on global virtual teams. Global virtual team members love to complain about cultural differences a lot. Sometimes you will hear she's like this because she's in India, or he's in Ghana, he is a Ghanaian and therefore he's like that. Or GTV members would say they were misunderstood or disrespected or maltreated or mistreated because their team members did not understand their culture. Yes, it is very true. This is not to say that culture does not matter. Culture matters most, and it influences every part of S-Culture project. It's rather good to start meeting such differences now and try to know what to expect in the future when working in real business setting than to wait to be shocked by it. S-Culture project is designed to take into consideration the impact that culture will have on work assignments, and so it is inevitable to have offset the problem of cultural difference when working in S-Culture. Now, what could be the best practices to this issue or the problem? The issue of cultural differences can be best addressed if global virtual team members try to turn those cultural differences into opportunities. Team members come from different backgrounds, have access to different pool of knowledge and ideas. It is likely that they have access to uh, different libraries and different professional networks as well. When teams are different, brainstorming tends to be particularly effective and more creative ideas are generated, and this comes the importance of crowdsourcing. Thus, communication in global virtual teams and idea sharing is key in diverse teams, and it helps the team to come out with better quality decision that ends up bringing a very solid and conclusive solution to whatever problem the team is facing. Rather than assigning different report sessions to different members and letting them work independently, team members should communicate frequently, use brainstorming, and discuss key decisions whenever possible. When this is done, the problem of cultural differences may be minimized to some extent. Team members should also not dismiss the idea of others just because they are different from theirs. They should learn from each other. The more different ideas you have on the table, the more likely you are to have a solution that is the most creative and effective. If problem arises due to cultural differences, it is not the best way to rush to blame them, the causer, or to rush to blame those involved on the ground of cultural differences. It could be simply a result of personalities, lack of effort or skills. Assigning blame to cultural differences provide an excuse not to try to work it out. And so it is not the best way to assign problems when the problem of cultural differences happen in global virtual teams. And it is also important to know that you can't change one's culture. However, recognizing the problem may not be recognizing that the problem may not be sometimes cultural, and that can be solved by working harder on communicating more in the teams gives a chance at improving the performance of the team rather than blaming cultural differences as the main cause of teams performance low performance. Now the next problem I'm going to discuss is lack of commitment from some team members in global virtual teams, and this is what is referred to in S culture as free riding, and that is a technical term for those who do not show commitment in team participation. Now, in any team, at least some team members have a busy work schedule, and some have family obligations or get sick in the process. As a result, some team members don't actively participate in the project. Some may send an email or two at first and then disappear, and some never send any message at all. This is what we call the social loafing or free riding. It is a common problem in teams in general, and especially in global virtual teams where team members have not met each other in person and have not developed the close social obligations or friendship among themselves. It tends to be more serious and then also affect student participation in teams. Studies report that up to 30% of members in corporate global virtual teams tend to be free riders. That is, they do some work but do not meet expectation of their teams. And as culture, on average, there is at least one team member per team whose participation rate is below expectation. That is, they do not do something at all, but they do. Some also do something that is less expected. And approximately 30% of all trainees that is 1 per 10 team members or so don't participate at all and have to be excluded from the project. In most cases too, the missing team members turn up toward the end of the project. Uh, and this means from the start of the project, they do not participate and leave up the work to the other team members who may be bothering themselves on the project and try to win them some marks at the end. And this situation creates more problem as most of the work is done by some other team members, and then the missing team members no longer participate, and sometimes it is a major cause of conflict in global virtual teams, and it may also result into further conflict that may occur in global virtual teams. So it is important for team members in global virtual teams to be aware of the issue of free riding so that they will plan towards it. The question is, what is the best practices to help offset the problem of free riding? Now, the problem of free riding can be best addressed by first trying to foster close social ties among team members. Studies show that spending only a few minutes asking team members about their interests, their hobbies, their work experience, and interesting facts from their lives helps a lot, and it leads to a noticeable improvement in team's commitment. In this way, the commitment level of the teams may be high and will try to help to improve the team's work. And right at the start of the project, it is important to discuss what each team member is expected to do and what happens if they don't perform, and that is to specify who is to do what in the project. And better yet, a team charter can be developed that clearly states the roles and tasks of each team member and what the team will do if a team member does not do his or her share of the work. It is also important to keep sending emails to the missing team members every day, and even if they are not responding or you do not hear from them, it's important to keep sending them emails to create the awareness that the project is in progress and they should come and give up their support to the team. In S culture, every week you will be asked who on your team is not actively participating in the project in the survey that students are going to take part. And it is important to make sure it is important for team members to make sure that they provide the names of the missing students. The information will be used to identify problems and help resolve them. In cases when nothing helps and the missing team members doesn't participate, the person will be excluded from S quarter. And so the most important thing that S quarter has tried to integrate in the project is to provide some comment session alongside the survey where team members can provide the necessary comments or the necessary problems they are facing in the teams to seek for the assistance of coach or from the S culture executive. Now, team members should not wait for too long. If after several days they don't hear from a trainee or two of them, or maybe three, or maybe they don't hear from each other, those available should start working on the project with the trainees who reply to messages and emails, and that is the best thing to do. And it is also important to keep sending updates to the missing students, but do not wait too long for them. It's good for the team to just do what they can with the available resources that they have. When the other team members come, they could come and join. But in the actual fact, it is not the best practice to be missing from such an important project like Escorter, even though there may be lots of reasons to it, but it's always important for everybody to participate in the project to help the project to be successful to the team. If you never hear from your missing team members, despite your best efforts to get in touch with them, or their inputs remain very limited, the best thing a team can do is to give low peer evaluation to the missing students. Their poor performance will be reflected in their course grade, and as culture would exclude them from the project because they might not be ready to participate in the project, or they are not ready to complete the project, and because their act is frustrating to the other team members. Now, the next problem I'm going to address is lack of leadership and then difficulties with workload distribution and team coordination. In fact, this plays a very major role in teams' poor performance. And so it is very important to pay a particular attention to this particular project problem. So now, with no formally appointed team leader and no prior experience together, some team experiences challenges due to lack of leadership. Everyone is waiting for someone else to tell them what needs to be done and how, and they will be there, and time may be running out and the team is not making any progress. Now this leads to frustration and teams start blaming each other for the problems. There are ideas, many reasons your team members may be reluctant to take initiative, but because of the nature of the team, people from different backgrounds and others even considering others to be superior to them, they would not be able to take the initiative to become the group's leader. But in the actual fact, having a team leader from scratch of the S-Culture project helps to specify who is to do what and the necessary measures that will be put in place, especially establishing the team's norm and values and traditions that could help go a long way to help finish the project successfully. For most team members, English is a foreign language. They may have difficulties communicating or are just shy to start a conversation. Most of them don't even have prior leadership experience at all. And some team members are also come from different cultures where modesty is valued, and they may be worried that if they try to assume a leadership role, they will be perceived as too aggressive or inconsiderate. Now, what is the best practices to solve this problem? In fact, the problem of leadership and workload distribution is one that global virtual teams should take a very close look at, because I see this as an engine for the team's progress. So it is very important to pay a close attention to this. And in S-Culture, always it has been the teams who begin by establishing their team norms, by appointing leaders to lead the team, who are able to coordinate their activities and participate in the project, who become successful at the last part of the project. So that is, they end up becoming part of the best teams, and so it will be very important for team members to have a leader who could coordinate things and help to move things forward. Now, the best thing that can be done here to resolve the problem of leadership and workload distribution is for an individual team member to take personal initiative to become the team's leader if the team is not voting to elect a leader. Now, don't be afraid to take the first step in a team when you don't have a leader. If you see that something is not done well, or it is not at the right position, just send your team members your vision for how things should be done. If nobody knows what needs to be done, simply send your suggestions for who should do what. And it is very important not to be pushy, just to see That's, oh team, I see we have a very big problem here, and why don't we do this? In fact, putting it in this manner would even be so polite for the team members to agree on what you intend to do, rather than sitting there and see things to go over. And one most important thing is that your team members are likely uh, going to appreciate that someone is finally taking a leading role, and this is very important. And it's better to try and fail than to never try. So students don't need to be shy about this. Rather, taking initiative when your team is not having a leader uh, will help to engineer the team to the success of the whole project. If someone else is trying to manage your team, be supportive as well. And it is important for the team to decide on their leadership qualities, and it will be the leadership positions in the team. And it is even important to appoint a leader, appoint an assistant leader, and appoint others to be coordinators for the team, develop a team charter, and all for the best and the full participation and the purpose, goods, and the success of the project. So, like I've already indicated, leadership and workload distribution are most parts of the problem that students face in global virtual teams. And the problem even gets compounded when students get to the latter parts of the projects where they have to develop their final report drafts and the project. So I believe that what I've provided here will be useful to the students in guiding them out. The next problem that I'm going to talk about is the poor quality of work from some team members. This is hard to quantify though, but most team members have at least one team member whose work quality is unsatisfactory, and it happens even in the real world situation where people may not be supportive in giving satisfactory feedback for the assignment that they may be doing. And GTV members come from around the world, just like the corporate global virtual teams, where members are from different parts of the world and with different skills, different knowledge, different ethics, different level of understanding, and all this comes into the work that they will be doing, and it's end up affecting the team's dynamics, and the team performance is also greatly affected. Now, Esquire research shows that in 72% of the teams, at least one team member prepares a report section that is so weak that the other team members will have to redo it. And it is also possible that a team member may not complete his or her work at all. And worst of all, the team members will likely learn how poor the work of some of the team members is only a few days before the final deadline. Until then, the team assumes everyone is working hard and produce a good report section. Then a surprise, one section is missing, or maybe some section of the team members are not developed quality. And what you could ask, what is the best way or the best thing to do in this situation? Now, the idea to offset poor quality work from some team members can be done in several ways, and this will be very useful. First, don't wait until the last day or just hope everything will be fine. So it is important for the team members not to wait for the last day and hope that everything will be fine. They should check the work of other team members regularly to see if they are on track. And then it's also important to use Dropbox or Google Docs to store all your team's work from day one, so that you will have a track record of uh, everything the team has been able to do, and in case a team's work is not a team member's work is not satisfactory or up to the standard the team expects, they can refer to it and make some changes to it to help prevent underperforming team members. It's also a good idea to assign two students to each task. Now, doing this will not only stimulate the exchange of ideas and improve the quality of the work, but will also provide a backup if one of the team members doesn't do his or her work. And so some teams also assign one team members to be a backup in every situation, and his or her work or his or her job is to just stand by and wait until something goes wrong. And this in a way help team members to be there for each other, especially in situations where one team member may be weak at some section of the report, and it's and when this happens, it end up giving some motivation to the team and trying to improve the team's morale. Lastly, it is always a good idea to assign one team member to be a coordinator, whose job is only to frequently check the work of each other members and detect problems early, and if needed, reassign workload so that the problem is addressed before it's too late for the team. Now, the next problem I'm going to talk about is the issue of plagiarism. Plagiarism is a very great issue, an academic crime when it comes to producing academic work. And it is common that when the report draft, which is due in 1 week before the final deadline of the project, is submitted to 1018.com, the team may discover that the work of one or more team members contains plagiarism. It's very common to see this in global virtual teams. This often happens to team members in global virtual teams, and even in the corporate virtual global teams, it's also happening as well. In some countries, attitude toward copyright and intellectual property are rather relaxed, and some people just don't know or don't care that plagiarism is a serious problem. Some students English is also poor, and they feel it better to copy and paste someone else's work than to do their own writing, and this also contributes to the issue of plagiarism. The problem is that it is often too late when you learn that part of your team report was plagiarized, and your team simply has no time to redo this. And you would ask, what is the best practices that can be put in place to offset the issue of plagiarism? Now, it works best if the teams could do what I'm going to talk about. First, it is important for the teams to discuss their team policy about plagiarism early, so that every team member knows plagiarism will be caused by 1018 when they are submitting their final project or the report draft. And as a matter of fact, the necessary things must be done to check the issue of plagiarism. And also, it is also important to check the work of your team members regularly to detect problems early, especially those who do not often provide references to their work. And submitting the report draft early can also help to offset the problem of plagiarism, because 1018, that S culture, make it one of their best demand to check the problem of plagiarism. Will try to highlight a portion of the work of the teams that contains plagiarized work, and in effect, if the team has more time to this, they can do something as quickly as possible to help solve the situation rather than to wait until the final deadline before they submit their work, and it will be too late for them to do anything about their team. However, you can submit your work and test for plagiarism only once, so the teams in S-courses should note this, and hence it will be wise to submit your work only close to the deadline when it is finished. So the team members must also take note of this. If there are team members whose English is very poor, it may be a good idea not to assign them to do any writing and instead task them with collecting information or helping with coordination. And those who are very good in English or the working language should do the necessary compilation for the work for the success of the team. Now the next problem, and in fact the final one I'm going to talk about here, is the team failing to harness the power of teamwork. Now the value of teamwork is the exchange of ideas, discussions, brainstorming, checking each other's work and correcting mistakes. Global virtual team members bring together people from around the world. It is a mistake to waste this opportunity to interact and put diverse minds together. And one of the biggest mistakes a team can make is to divide the questions among the team members so that each team member answers one or two questions. Then the answers are just put together and the report is submitted without team members reading each other's work. In fact, it is a very important practice to help to engage team members in discussion and communication for the success of the project. Now, we are going to ask what's worked best for teams who are worried about how they can be able to harness the power of teamwork, which will go a long way to help the team to develop a very good report, which could be, of course, one of the best 10 reports that S-Culture is looking for to reward those team members. Experience shows that the best reports are produced when teams rely on collective wisdom. One of the more successful strategies is described below. Now, you can use a different strategy. This is just an example of a successful strategy that I'm going to address in this problem, concerning this problem and what teams can be able to do about it. First, when the client's organization is selected, each team member generates ideas for answering each question. It can be done in a teleconference using Skype or Facebook group discussion board, or using the Google Docs file where all questions are listed in a text document, and everyone can write some thoughts and comments on each other's input. Engaging the team in discussion can open and go on for several days, and this as well will help the team to develop different ideas concerning the project each time. So when they are ready to work on the project, they will know what to expect and what everybody needs to bring to be able to complete the project. Second, only after all questions have been brainstormed and initial ideas have been gathered, the team divides the tasks among team members. And this is also one of the significant measures to put in place to ensure that there is the idea of team power in place to help the team to complete its project. And third, it works best if the team appoints one of the team members as a coordinator, which regularly checks the work of others and sends reminders when needed. And the team also appoints one member, and usually a native English speaker, who does final copy editing and formatting of the team. So it is necessary to put all this in place. And the fourth, each team member's work is stored in Dropbox or Google Docs, and everybody is required to regularly read the work of everybody else and provide feedback. When this happens, it means the team is working really as a strong team to develop a very important and solid but feasible reports for their clients. The final thing I'm going to talk about harnessing the power of teamwork is that when the final draft of the team report is put together, every team member needs to read the entire report and makes the necessary corrections and adds comments or suggestions for further improvement. It works best if a single copy of the document in Dropbox is co-edited by an entire team using maybe MS Word track changes or Google Docs. This way, all suggestions, revisions are visible in one document, and it will be useful to track some of the changes that others have been able to make, and for the team to be able to work perfectly on them. And this brings us to the end of the discussion, and you now see that it is very important to know some of these problems that occur in global virtual teams and how to guide your way out. And to wrap it up in this discussion, this is what I discussed. First, we discussed about time zone differences and the best way to tackle them, and we also looked at the scheduling and coordination problems and the best practices that students can put in place to check them out. We also highlighted on the problem of calendar differences on team members and what needs to be done about it. And I also talk about language proficiency differences in teams and what team members can do about it. And I also highlighted conflicting copies of the documents in email attachment and what teams can do about it. And I did not also ignore the issue of cultural differences in teams and the best practice that team members need to put in place on it. And then I also highlighted on the lack of commitment from team members, what we call the free riding, and what team members can be able to do about free riding. And there's also a discussion in this video on lack of leadership in the team and difficulties with workload distribution. That's aids coordination and participation of team members in the team. And then I also highlighted on some of the possible causes of poor quality of work produced by some team members and the issue of plagiarism. And finally, I talked about the team inability to harness the power of the team that could go a long way to impact on the team's performance and the team's dynamics for the success of S culture. And all these are the known problems in global virtual teams, and the best way to address them has already been discussed in this video lecture. And finally, to conclude, I will say that global virtual team members need to have an insight into these problems that has been discussed and know the best practices in each situation to be able to guide and shield themselves against the possible effect it will have on the success of their project. Anything that may find this video or this discussion useful and try to follow the necessary measures would be able to offset the necessary problems that can be could face in the global virtual teams. And I don't mind seeing into every team following these instructions to become one of the top 10 that S culture is trying to reward and to reward them. So it is important to take into consideration all these when working in global virtual teams. In fact, most of these uh, problems are inevitable when working in global virtual teams. So knowing what to do at the right time will help the team be successful in their projects. Thank you for having time. Thank you so much.